what we have here is six 10-minute segments, all done at a relatively constant pace, and it's a tempo effort. So for our first runner, here's the two things that I picked that stick out sort of right away. If we're looking at heel pitch across these laps, we can see that this right side is a little bit high, and 34, upper 34s to 35 at this pace is a little bit of a high value. Remember, we want this to be lower is better, and I would say on the left side, 31 to 32 is a little bit more what I would expect to see. So just 1 point there. We've got a little bit high heel pitch on the right. The strike angular range, we see some pretty low values on the right. So 1.0, 1.1 gets a little bit better towards the end, but still relatively low values. The left side is better, but certainly could still have some space for improvement. So to me, I'm just looking at this, and as a takeaway, I'm seeing, okay, this right leg seems like we might have a little bit of an issue with power production there and with elastic energy transfer. So we're just going to keep that in mind, keep that in our pocket as we go forward. So here's just displaying that data again. This is our strike AR. We can see the average from the whole tempo run here, and same thing with the heel pitch here. So let's look at these asymmetries next. What we want to see is, where do these asymmetries get larger in magnitude? Or really, any big notable changes we want to just make a note of. So the first thing is in this ground contact time. We can see starting out, not too bad, pretty similar here, a difference of about 6 milliseconds. So really a really small difference. But as things progress, as some of the fatigue sets in, we see that that magnitude growing quite a bit to 13 milliseconds, which is over double change. Next one is the thigh swing speed down here. We can see this starts off pretty even, about 7 degrees per second difference. And as the activity progresses, we see that growing in magnitude quite a bit. Actually, the thigh swing speed down here increases from 7 degrees per second up to 33 degrees per second, which is quite an increase. That's about a 5 times change or so almost. So, this is a key area. What we're gonna want to do with this information is try to figure out about how long into the activity these changes are starting to increase in their magnitude. So a lot of times a runner will be able to sustain their optimal or baseline form for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then past that point we start to see some of the struggle set in. We start to see some of these movement patterns change. And that's going to be the real goal here today, is identifying at what point do we start to see some of these collections of changes happening, and then how can we shape our training around that. And so with the ground contact time, it maintains pretty evenly for the first 30 minutes before we start to see, especially that right side start to increase a whole lot. Left side is even increasing in that back half as well. And the thigh swing speed we could say, after about the 20-minute mark, that asymmetry starts to grow a little bit more. Sometimes when we're doing this, it's a little bit of a judgment call. It's not always a super clear threshold, and you got to sort of take all of the information that you have and just make a bit of an educated decision on it. So let's look at just sort of a global decline of form. Next thing we want to do is identify any specific duration where a decline of form from baseline begins. And so looking at, I just pulled out these 4 metrics because they seemed pretty telling. We've got ground contact time, we've got recoil angular range, that's how high the foot is lifting after leaving the ground. We've got heel pitch, and we've got strike angular range. And the ground contact time, recoil AR, and heel pitch, all after about 30 minutes, we can see ground contact time starts to trend upwards a lot. That means we're spending more time on the ground. Recoil angular range starts to experience a pretty steady decline, which means that we're not releasing energy at toe off quite as well. That foot's not coming quite as high. It's going to affect our swing mechanics. And then the heel pitch, a little bit difficult to see here, but that starts to trend a little bit higher after the 30-minute mark, which means that we are ultimately spending more time transferring that vertical force into propulsive force, and we're getting a little bit less for it, meaning we're not going as far on each stride.